Alice lowered her gaze, ashamed. I didn't sleep with him. I swear. That's not the point, Alice. Anthony's voice cracked for the first time. You gave your heart to someone else. You lied to me. You looked at a boy, someone you teach, and saw something you used to see in me. And instead of fighting for us, you chose him. Tears ran down her face. She reached for him, but he stepped back. Please, Anthony. I was lost. You were always busy. You barely looked at me anymore. I felt invisible. So that makes it right? He asked. You needed attention, so you turned to a teenager? Allow me to take you through the deepest, darkest, emotional, and heartbreaking part of this story. Alice Carter had everything most women dreamed of. She was beautiful, educated, and deeply respected in her field. For 10 years, she taught English literature at Crestwood High School in Georgia, one of the finest schools in the state. Her students adored her, and her colleagues saw her as a role model. But behind the smiles and classroom lectures, Alice was tired of the routine, tired of being taken for granted at home, and tired of pretending her marriage to Anthony was still filled with love. Anthony was a banker, kind, responsible, but always too busy. Their conversations had reduced to grocery lists and bills. The warmth they once shared had cooled. Alice often sat in silence at dinner, staring at her husband's face buried in his phone. Then came Josh. Josh Reynolds was a senior in her AP Literature class. 17, charming, mature beyond his years, and the son of a wealthy businessman in Atlanta. He wasn't just another rich kid who paid others to do his homework. He was bright, well-spoken, and curious. He asked questions no other student did. His essays were deep, emotional, and raw. He made eye contact. He smiled when Alice spoke. And more importantly, he saw her. It started with casual chats after class. Literature turned into life. He would linger behind, ask her about books, then ask her about herself. He said things like, "You don't seem happy, Mrs. Carter, and you deserve better than just being appreciated in the classroom." At first, Alice brushed it off. But deep inside, something stirred. Josh became a mirror, one that reflected the version of Alice she hadn't seen in years. The vibrant, confident, fun woman she used to be. She began to look forward to his presence. She started dressing a little differently, adding a touch of makeup she hadn't worn in months. A part of her knew this was dangerous territory, but another part, one that had felt invisible for so long, kept walking toward the edge. It was a rainy Tuesday when things crossed the line. Josh had stayed back to help arrange books after class. The room was quiet except for the soft patter of rain on the windows. He looked at her with eyes too wise for a teenager and said, "You deserve to be happy, you know." Alice looked at him and whispered, "Do I?" And in that silence, something unspoken passed between them. They didn't touch. They didn't kiss. But a door had been opened. Over the weeks, they met more often. In the library. In her car. At a quiet corner of the town's bookstore cafe. Always careful, always hidden. What started as an emotional connection quickly turned into something more intimate, but still, no physical boundaries were crossed. They didn't need to. The betrayal was already real. Alice kept telling herself she was in control, that it was harmless. But she began ignoring Anthony's texts. She skipped dinner at home. She lied about meetings that didn't exist. Josh, on the other hand, was falling hard. He told her he loved her. He said he would wait until he was older. He even hinted at running away together. Alice smiled but never answered. She knew this couldn't last forever. But secrets have a way of revealing themselves. One afternoon, while Alice was in the kitchen preparing a cup of tea, Anthony came home early. She hadn't heard the door open. She didn't see him standing behind her as her phone lit up with a message. "Miss you. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Josh Rehart." Anthony froze. His heart dropped. He read the message twice before Alice noticed the shift in the air. When she turned and saw his face, her world stopped. "Alice," he said in a quiet voice filled with confusion and pain, "who's Josh?" Her hand trembled. The cup of tea slipped and shattered on the floor. There, in the silence of their kitchen, their marriage broke. Anthony stood still in the kitchen, his eyes fixed on Alice. The warmth that once filled their home had vanished, replaced by a heavy silence that hung in the air like a storm cloud. Alice didn't speak at first. Her mind raced. She wanted to explain, to defend herself, to take back every message, every meeting, every lie. "But how do you explain a betrayal that cuts so deep?" "Anthony," she finally said, her voice barely a whisper. "It's not what you think." "Then what is it?" he asked, his voice calm, but his eyes filled with hurt. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like my wife is having something with a student." Alice lowered her gaze, ashamed. "I didn't sleep with him. I swear." "That's not the point, Alice." Anthony's voice cracked for the first time. "You gave your heart to someone else. You lied to me. You looked at a boy, someone you teach, and saw something you used to see in me. And instead of fighting for us, you chose him." Tears ran down her face. She reached for him, but he stepped back. "Please, Anthony. I was lost. You were always busy. You barely looked at me anymore. I felt invisible." "So that makes it right?" he asked. "You needed attention, so you turned to a teenager?" Alice knew how it sounded. There were no excuses, only regret. That night, Anthony slept on the couch. The house felt colder than ever. Alice stayed in their room, staring at the wall, haunted by everything she had done. The next morning, things only got worse. News travels fast in a small town. Somehow, a student overheard Josh talking about Alice. A rumor spread like wildfire. By midday, the principal called Alice into his office. She was suspended pending an investigation. Alice's hands trembled as she signed the papers. She couldn't even look the principal in the eye. Josh had also been called in. When their eyes met in the hallway, she saw fear in his. Not love, not strength, fear. And in that moment, Alice realized something important. Josh was still just a boy. A boy who didn't understand the weight of adult consequences. A boy who thought love was a story from one of the books they read in class. He wasn't ready for the chaos that came with falling for a married woman. Alice returned home with her world crashing down. Anthony was packing a bag. "Where are you going?" she asked, her voice shaking. "To my sister's," he replied without looking at her. "I need time." "Please," she begged. "Don't go. I don't even know who you are anymore, Alice. I don't know how to be under the same roof with someone I can't trust." She collapsed into a chair, watching him walk away. The sound of the front door closing behind him was louder than thunder. Days passed, then weeks. Alice was suspended indefinitely. Her name was whispered at grocery stores and gas stations. Some parents demanded she be fired. Others said it was just rumors. But Alice knew the truth. Josh never contacted her again. Anthony didn't answer her calls. The woman who once inspired young minds had become the talk of the town for the wrong reasons. Alice stayed alone in their home, surrounded by silence and guilt. She read books, not to escape, but to punish herself. Each love story felt like a slap in the face. One afternoon, she looked through old photo albums, her wedding day, their honeymoon, holidays together. She stared at the version of herself smiling beside Anthony, full of dreams and hope. That woman felt like a stranger. She had betrayed a good man. Not because she stopped loving him, but because she stopped believing she mattered to him. But now she understood something painful. When two people stop trying, something or someone else will try to fill the gap. And sometimes, that someone can ruin everything. In her loneliness, Alice wrote a letter to Anthony. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't try to justify anything. She simply wrote the truth. I broke your heart, and in doing so, I broke mine too. I don't deserve your love, but I want you to know that I never stopped loving you. I just forgot how to show it. She mailed it, not expecting a reply. But deep inside, she hoped. The letter reached Anthony on a Thursday afternoon. He read it twice, then a third time. Every word carried the weight of a broken promise, a lost connection, and a woman trying to make sense of her own choices. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He just sat quietly in his sister's guest room, staring at the wall, remembering the woman he married. The woman who used to dance barefoot in the kitchen. The woman who used to read poems out loud while he cooked. Somewhere along the way, life had changed. And maybe, just maybe, he had changed too. But love, real love, doesn't vanish overnight. It fades when it's neglected. It cracks when it's taken for granted. And it shatters when trust is broken. Anthony wasn't sure if his love for Alice had died or if it was just buried beneath too much pain. Back at home, Alice tried to move on, even though she didn't know where to start. Her teaching license was under review. Her reputation was damaged. And her marriage, once the most stable part of her life, was now hanging by a thread. One Sunday morning, she drove to the church they used to attend together. She sat in the back row, far from familiar faces. When the service ended, she stayed behind, tears filling her eyes as the choir sang about mercy and forgiveness. That evening, her phone buzzed. It was Anthony. "I got your letter." She stared at the screen for a long time before replying. "Thank you for reading it." They didn't speak for days after that. But something had shifted. A week later, Anthony came home, not to move back in, but to talk. They sat at the dining table, the same place they had once shared so many quiet meals. Now, it felt like neutral ground between two people learning how to face each other again. "I don't hate you, Alice," he said softly. "But I don't trust you either." "I understand," she replied. "I keep asking myself why," he continued. "Why didn't you come to me when you felt so lost? Why didn't we try to fix things instead of pretending everything was fine?" "I was afraid," she said honestly. "Afraid that you wouldn't hear me. Afraid that I wasn't enough anymore. And when Josh came along, I felt seen. I felt alive. But it was a lie. A dangerous lie that I let grow." Anthony nodded slowly. "I'm not perfect either. I've been so caught up in work, in responsibilities. I didn't see you slipping away." They sat in silence for a while. Not awkward silence, just quiet understanding. The kind that comes after truth is laid bare. "I don't know what's next," Anthony admitted. "I need time. Maybe we both do. But I wanted you to know. I remember who you were before all this. And maybe, deep down, she's still in there." Tears rolled down Alice's cheeks. She didn't try to stop them. "I want to find her again," she whispered. "Not just for you. For me." They didn't hug. They didn't make promises. But they stood up together and walked outside, where the sun was beginning to set behind the trees. In the weeks that followed, they spoke more. Honestly. Gently. Carefully. There were no easy answers, and trust couldn't be rebuilt overnight. But there was effort. And sometimes, effort is the beginning of healing. Alice volunteered at a youth center while she waited for the school board's final decision. It wasn't teaching, but it gave her a sense of purpose again. She talked to young girls about choices, self-worth, and consequences. She never saw Josh again. His family had transferred him to a private school in another city. It was for the best. Some stories are not meant to continue. One evening, as Alice walked past the bookshelf at home, she saw the framed photo from their wedding day, her in white, Anthony smiling beside her, both so full of hope. She picked it up, held it to her chest, and whispered, "I'm sorry." Maybe their marriage would survive. Maybe it wouldn't. But one thing was clear. She had learned a painful, lasting lesson. Love isn't just about how someone makes you feel. It's about choosing each other. Especially when it's hard.